The frame bosses on your new bike may seem quite insignificant, but here's something a lot of people don't completely understand. Bikes leak water, and the problem is it's going in rather than out. The manufacturer and the mechanic who did the final assembly most likely did nothing to resolve this. These trivial little bosses are one of the main culprits. Whether it's riding in the rain or jet washing your bike, the water is seeping in through them. Welcome to stage 6 of Tour de Bike 2024, where I'm going to show you there's a way to alleviate this problem. Plus, I'll show you my preferred method for fitting a pair of bottle cages. It might seem like an easy job, but it is actually quite fiddly, and there is a right way to do it. If you don't do it the right way, you could end up not being able to get the bolts out again, or worse still, damaging your frame beyond sensible repair. You've just got to become the bike. You're going to want to take all the bolts out of the frame bosses, including any rack or mudguard ones if you have them. Get your grease gun and squirt a dollop of grease inside all of the bosses. If you haven't got a grease gun, you can just use the nozzle off a GT85 or a WD-40 can and just put it inside the hole with some grease on it and just swirl it around. If you just put it on the thread of the bolt, when you screw the bolt in, most of that grease won't go in, and that's all you'll be relying on to get the bolt out in the future. Repeat for all the bolts and then wipe off any excess grease. If you're fitting an accessory like a bottle cage, you want to do the smearing before you fit the cage itself. If you feel like you're getting benefit from this, share it with everyone you know who you think would benefit as well. Here are the bottle cages we're going to fit. More often than not, they come with a set of bolts. These ones here look a bit cheap, but they're definitely better than using alloy ones. Alloy bolts lend themselves to having the heads rounded out or snapping off in the frame in the future. And these are two places you don't want to visit. Let's get these cages on the frame. Now, the temptation would be to put the down tube one on first because it's right there in front of you. If you do it in that order, you'll make this job significantly more tricky. There's not much room to play with here, and putting the cage on the down tube first will interfere with the tools when you're trying to fit the second one on the seat tube. Get one of your bolts and fit it to the end of your Allen key. I always use a T-bar when I can for this job. The other tools you can use for this make the job a bit trickier, and I wouldn't even consider using a multi-tool. Dip the bolt into the grease and then put it through the top hole of the bottle cage. This will make it much easier to fit because it can hang from the bolt while you're tightening it up rather than you trying to hold it. Sometimes it's much easier to screw this in using two hands. Screw it in most of the way so that you can still maneuver the bottle cage a little bit, and then you want to line up the second bolt and screw that one in as well. Don't screw it in so it's completely tight. If you can't get a T-bar to turn freely, then just use the long end of an Allen or hex key. A lot of Allen keys these days have a ball end on the long shank like the one I have here. Contrary to popular belief, these ball ends aren't for use when tightening bolts up. They're just for use to get into tricky positions and just screw the bolt in till it gets to the tightening point at the very most. This is where the head of the bolt gets rounded out, especially if you're using alloy ones. This could also be the point where the bolt becomes unremovable in a sensible manner. If it's the bottom one, you won't even be able to get a drill in there. When the bolts are just about tight, you want to hold the bottle cage so that it's straight with the tube and it's up or down the tube where you want it, and then you want to tighten the bolts up with a T-bar or with the short end of a normal Allen key. I can't stress how easy it is to screw this up. I did it myself servicing a bike a couple of weeks ago when I was trying to access a bolt from someone else who hadn't tightened the bottle cage up properly on a brand new bike. That bike now has two black steel bolts in the bottle bosses on the seat tube. Don't use a ball end Allen key for the final tighten. The general consensus is 2 to 3 Newton meters, and people wonder why they come off the bike when they're charged with carrying 852 grams. I'm going to say 5 to 7 Newton meters, but you just have to use your best judgment. This is a steel frame with steel bosses that have been brazed in. If it's an aluminium frame or a carbon frame, the fittings are riv nuts. If the bolts come loose with that sort of weight and leverage on them, you run the risk of damaging the threads in the riv nuts, and then you've got a major problem to deal with. With an aluminium frame, I'd drill the riv nut out and fit a new one to it. A carbon one would be going somewhere else to get sorted out. Maybe the bin. Drop any aha moments in the comments. Fit the down tube cage in the same manner and wipe off any excess grease. Now you can rest easy that you're not going to get water in your frame through the drain holes. Plus, you've also got a way to hydrate yourself while you're out riding. If you haven't already subscribed, please do that now. And I look forward to seeing you in stage 7 of Tour de Bike 2024. In this stage, we'll be visiting the front of the bike region, where we'll be taking a look at the handlebar stem bolts and the handlebar bolts. You won't want to miss that when we get the bolts tightened up correctly and stop any future annoying creaks.